Hello, everyone. This is Namrata. I am so happy and proud to introduce Meera. She is a senior going to Mission San Jose High School. One thing that I like about Meera is like we started 2 weeks late in the program, and she put in her heart and soul to complete the project. I'm so proud of her. Like even on our very first day, she was ready with all the topics that she wanted to brainstorm with. And then even I was confused because mental health, that was the overall project, I would say. But being in a neuroscience, that topic is very close to me. So I even had to take some advice from Ira, and then we finally finalized the project. So I won't say anything because Mira is the star of this project. She did all the work. I am just like in the shadow, I would say. I just let her do whatever she wanted to do, and she did an awesome job. So I will let Meera speak about the project. So here you go, Meera.
Thank you, Namrata. Okay, so my mentor is Namrata. She works at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, and she has a PhD in molecular biology with an emphasis on neuroscience. So I selected my project by first brainstorming on some ideas to work on with Namrata, and then eliminating them until I found out what I was doing. So I wanted to do a project based on psychology and mental health around teenagers, so that's what these ideas were based on. So these were the four main ideas that I came up with. It was on how drugs affect teens, the stigma around mental health, how social media has affected society and the way that teens interact with one another, and how people's brains and frontal lobes mature over their life. And my final idea ended up being a combination of a few of them, and it is mental health around teens and the negative stigma around the topic. So a little bit about my project. I researched and analyzed scientific journals, which helped me learn more about the topic as a whole and also helped me when making the IRB form questions. So then I conducted an IRB survey where I asked teens in my area about their views on mental health. And an IRB is an institutional review board, which is basically a survey that is sent out to help gather data. So for my scientific research papers, I used two databases, which were PubMed and Google Scholar, and I searched mental health in teenagers, which gave 476,992,000 results. Out of those, I browsed about 80 articles, and then I chose to read and analyze 10. I made a typo here. So I wrote the names and authors of 5, which I found most fascinating and interesting. So the first one was about barriers and facilitators and interventions for help-seeking teens. This showed the stigma and negative beliefs were the biggest barriers, while prior positive experiences with mental health services and literacy were the biggest facilitators, and the biggest interventions needed was psychoeducation in school, which is something that I'll go into later. And the biggest barriers were stigma and negative beliefs. And the second one talks about how nature has a positive impact on mental health. The third highlights the potential importance between dietary patterns and quality of mental health in teens. The fourth talks about physical health problems, how physical health problems can increase our risk of developing mental health problems and vice versa. And the fifth talked about the core concepts of mental health. Sorry. Okay. Okay, now going on into my IRB questions. So I made an IRB form, which I got processed through the school board and sent out to teenagers in my area. I got 61 responses. So my first question was, do you think mental health is addressed well in teaching at school? And around 74% said no and 26% said yes. So I was a little surprised at how many people said yes, because I expected a smaller amount of people for that category, because I feel as though we don't have many days that go in depth about mental health in my area or school. My next question was, what age do you think schools should start teaching kids about mental health? And half the responses were ages 9 through 12, while the others were 5 through 8 and 13 through 16. So the responses to this surprised me a little, because I expected the majority of people to put ages 9 through 12, as I feel that 5 through 8 is too young for children to understand and comprehend what mental health exactly is, and 13 through 16 is too late of an age to begin introducing the topic. So my third question was, Do you think social media, your peers, or environment affect your mental health? If so, which one affects it the most? And I was pretty taken aback by these responses because I originally thought that social media or peers would be the majority of responses because many teenagers compare themselves to the people around them and they compare themselves to the unrealistic ways that they see social media influencers and celebrities who they idolize present themselves, and this can just take a toll on teenager self-esteem or confidence. However, I realized later that I live in an area where there's a lot of academic pressure put on students and it's a really competitive environment, which is why that option must have won. So my next question was, do you think you have the support you need when it comes to your mental health? Example, a trusted one to talk to, access to mental health organization, hotline numbers, etc. So I expected these results, but I did think that there would be a lot less people who said no. So my next question was a free response question, and it was, do you think your family or culture plays a role in your beliefs on mental health? If so, how? So 55 people said yes and 6 people said no, but the people who said no didn't give an explanation, so I'll just be going more in depth about the people who responded yes. So I chose 6 responses, which I thought summarized the responses as a whole the best. And the first one I chose explains how mental health is seen by many cultures as something that's not important because everyone goes through it. And the next one explains how mental health is seen as a taboo topic by many cultures because it's something that is seen as fake and not real, meaning that it shouldn't be spoken about. Now on to the next quote. The person who wrote this explains they thought a lot of things that, like abuse, for example, in this scenario were considered okay. But as they grew older, they realized that it's not okay to be hurt all the time and it's okay to recognize that and talk about it. Another important term mentioned was immigrant mentality, which is a big part of this question. So immigrant mentality is what a lot of parents in my area have, which means they think that these feelings are caused because one is not working hard enough or that it's a problem that they themselves are creating. And throughout the responses, it was also mentioned that mental health felt as something that people could not talk about in their family, and it was something that they need to internalize because they felt that it was as though it was something that they have to hide. And it was also mentioned that many families viewed their child as being lazy and not hardworking if they were feeling depressed, tired, or unmotivated at times. And then my final IRB question was, overall, what do you rate your mental health on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best? So I decided to ask this question because I was just curious to see the responses, and I found this question interesting because I didn't expect the responses to be so spread out, especially based on the answers to the previous questions. I thought that most of them would be around smaller numbers. However, as you can see, the biggest rating was 8, and then 6, and then so on. So for my magical experience, a few of the highlights were that I learned a lot more about how teens in my area viewed mental health through the IRB forum. I found out how culture, family, nature, environment, peers, social media, and diet can all affect one's mental health. And a few of the lessons that I learned were that IRBs are a great and effective way to gather data and survey people. And it's really important to have good time management and communication skills when conducting a project like this. So for my challenges, the biggest challenge for me was conducting the IRB form. It was a huge work process to get through everything, especially because my school had actually switched platforms in which I had to get the IRB approved by the school board. And it was also the first week of school approaching, which made things very hectic and chaotic for everyone. So I had to come up with a different solution on how to get the IRB out. So I decided to post on school Facebook groups, but I wasn't getting as many responses as I wanted. So then I decided to approach people and request them to fill it out. And this all took about 3 weeks to get the whole thing processed. And here are a few hotlines to call in case of a crisis. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. I just wanted to quickly say thank you to all the volunteers who filled out my form because I wouldn't have been able to gather any data without them. And thank you to Get Magic for providing me with this opportunity. And thank you to Ira because she was there throughout the whole way whenever we had any questions to ask. And a big thank you to my mentor, Namrata, because she guided me and helped me throughout the entire project. So yeah, any questions? Yeah, that's all.
We have time for 1 or 2 questions. This is such an interesting topic that I'm sure many people have questions. You can be the first one to ask.
I have a question. This is Smriti again. This is a really happy to see, you're doing research in this space. And I was wondering, based on the findings, and I know you also mentioned that it might be biased towards the community you're in. What do you think will be the next steps in terms of this knowledge you have of the community you're in? Is there any sort of action you want to take in your community?
I think the biggest thing for me was something that I can relate to is implementation in the school system, because especially in my school, we don't really go in depth into mental health. And like I stated in one of the questions, and what age should it be implemented in? I really think that it's important to not just bring it up in high school, because I think a lot of elementary school kids also internalize it, or middle school kids. So I think that it should be implemented through ages 9 through 12. So people kind of get an idea of certain things that they'll start feeling, and that it's okay to feel that way and they don't have to internalize things.
Yeah, I think it would also be, there was a lot of info you found on how family and parents affect that culture. So it would be cool to see programs or things for parents as well.
Yeah.
Based on your findings here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
First of all, that was really cool. I really enjoyed seeing those answers. I'm curious how you decided which questions to ask.
Yeah, so the scientific research papers that I talked about, I kind of read those before making the form. So once I got information on that, I kind of based off my questions off of those research papers. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Nikita, you had a hand raised. I didn't see it. Sorry. You can, that'll be the third question and the last question. Please do ask.
Yeah, I was curious. I really loved your topic. I think it's really important. Especially I'm in high school too, and I see these issues happening a lot. And I was wondering if you were going to relay the information back to the people who did the quiz, and kind of the same idea that Smithy was talking about. And how are you going to use this information going forward?
Yeah, well, I'm part of my school's peer mentor or peer resource thing, which is basically how we have mental health days, but those are voluntary. So that's why I was kind of saying not many people are aware of it, because it's not mandatory. So I think that's one thing which I could share too, so that it kind of gets topic gets spoken about at my school. Yeah.
Really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meera. Congrats. Great project. Thank you, Namrata.